Why would the most powerful empire on Earth lose a war to a bunch of farmers? On paper, it makes absolutely no sense. On one side stood the British Empire, the global superpower of the 18th century. Its red-coated armies had defeated kings, conquered continents, and helped build an empire that stretched across the world. On the other stood American colonists, farmers, merchants, shopkeepers, men who spent more time behind plows than parade grounds. Yet somehow, those farmers pulled off one of the greatest upsets in military history, because they discovered something every empire fears. You don't have to defeat an empire. You only have to make ruling you cost more than it's worth. And by the time Britain realized that, it was already trapped in a war it couldn't win. Forget what you learned in school. The American Revolution didn't start with stirring speeches about liberty. It started with money. The British Empire had just won the biggest war the world had ever seen. The victory should have made Britain unstoppable. Instead, it nearly bankrupted them. London suddenly faced a terrifying question. Who was going to pay the bills? The answer seemed obvious. The American colonies. That single decision would trigger one of history's greatest strategic disasters. Britain had defeated France and emerged from the 7 Years' War with vast new territories across North America. It looked like the beginning of a golden age. But beneath the celebration was a financial nightmare. The war had left Britain buried under mountains of debt. Worse, protecting this enormous new empire required thousands of soldiers stationed across a distant wilderness, costing a fortune every year. The British government wasn't trying to be tyrannical. It was trying to stay solvent. From London's perspective, asking the colonies to contribute seemed perfectly reasonable. To the colonists, it felt like an ambush. What followed was a chain reaction neither side could stop. Britain passes the Stamp Act. The colonies riot. Britain backs down and tries new taxes. The colonies boycott British goods. Britain sends troops to restore order. The result is the Boston Massacre. The colonists respond with the Boston Tea Party, dumping a fortune of British property into the harbor. Every attempt to enforce order created more chaos. Every attempt to calm the situation made it worse. The empire was trapped inside a feedback loop it couldn't escape. By 1774, Britain faced two terrible choices: back down and teach every colony in the empire that rebellion works, or crack down and risk turning America into an active war zone. Neither option was good. Neither option guaranteed success. Britain wasn't being irrational. It was cornered. And cornered powers often make dangerous decisions. The funniest part: nobody could agree on what should happen next. In London, hardliners demanded punishment while moderates begged for compromise. British generals openly mocked the colonists, convinced they would scatter the moment they saw a line of redcoats. Across the Atlantic, the Americans were just as divided. Revolutionaries wanted independence. Moderates wanted reconciliation. Loyalists still supported the king. The British thought a quick show of force would solve everything. The Americans thought Britain would eventually come to its senses. Both were about to be disappointed. Then came April 1775. Lexington and Concord. British soldiers marched into the countryside expecting a routine mission to seize illegal weapons. Instead, they walked into a hornet's nest. Church bells rang. Messengers raced through the night. Farmers dropped their tools, grabbed their rifles, and rushed toward the sound of gunfire. In a single day, the greatest military power on Earth found itself at war with its own subjects. There was no turning back. The farmers picked up their rifles, and Britain chose war. At first, the outcome seemed obvious. Britain possessed one of the most professional armies in the world. Its navy ruled the oceans. Its economy dwarfed the colonies. And soon British forces began winning. They captured New York. They seized Philadelphia. Washington's army was driven back again and again, surviving brutal winters with little food, little clothing, and almost no hope. To outside observers, the revolution looked finished. For a moment, Britain's strategy appeared completely justified. But Britain was winning battles while fighting the wrong war. Its fatal weakness wasn't military. It was geography. Every soldier, musket, cannon, and supply shipment had to cross 3,000 miles of ocean. Once they arrived, they faced a continent-sized battlefield with no decisive capital to capture and no clear enemy to destroy. The rebels were everywhere, and nowhere. Then came the realization that changed everything. The Americans didn't have to defeat Britain. They only had to avoid losing. As long as Washington's army survived, the revolution survived. The colonists stretched the war out. They harassed supply lines. They vanished into the countryside. They turned time itself into a weapon. Then France entered the war. Suddenly, Britain wasn't fighting a colonial rebellion anymore. It was fighting another global conflict. The empire's resources were stretched across oceans. Its attention was divided across continents. And America became just one problem among many. The military climax came at Yorktown. But the real defeat happened in London. The treasury was exhausted. The public was frustrated. The costs kept rising. And the end was nowhere in sight. Then came the final irony. Britain won battle after battle. But it lost the one thing that mattered most: time. The farmers could never destroy the British Empire. They could never conquer London. They could never sink the Royal Navy. But they didn't need to. All they had to do was make governing America so expensive, so frustrating, and so endless that Britain eventually decided it wasn't worth the effort. And that's how men who spent more time behind plows than parade grounds humbled the most powerful empire on earth. Because empires aren't defeated when they lose battles. They're defeated when ruling becomes impossible.